Now, if you've listened to the previous few episodes of this show, you've heard us talk about the Hero's Journal. It's hard to put into words in just 3 or 4 minutes how unique and powerful this tool is, but we've been asking you to join our fellowship to begin your own quest to change your story. So today, I'm actually joined by Nick and Kyle. They are the creators of the Hero's Journal, and they're going to tell the tale of how the journal came about and why it's helping people change their lives. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the Porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that Porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to it.
Welcome to Tatooine Sons, the only fan podcast to name an official Star Wars creature and to be endorsed by the writer and director of The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation and that there is a story. It is written on our souls and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why I am honored to be joined this week by Nick and Kyle. They are the creators of the Hero's Journal. And Nick and Kyle are on their own quest to help people take control of the story they tell themselves and to achieve more than just some productivity goals. They want to see them change their lives. And they're doing this by creating a tool called the Hero's Journal. Changing your story takes small changes over a period of time. It's not giant moments of inspiration. It's small, consistent actions. And that is why Nick and Kyle combined their love for epic tales like The Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter to create more than just a daily task reminder and productivity journal. It's a way of looking at the story that we are writing and how we have the power to change it. Now, obviously, the Hero's Journal is a wordplay off of an idea that we've been talking about on Tatooine Sons for years, the hero's journey. So I asked Nick what the hero's journey of the Hero's Journal is. Here's what he had to say.
The journey is that, I grew up getting really terrible grades in school, as many, young boys do in elementary school and things like that. But my grades never got better. I pretty much graduated high school with like a 1.9 GPA, which is low for those who might not understand. And barely got into college, came into college on academic probation. While I was in a required class for people who are basically flunking, one of the professors was like, all you guys got to do is just get a planner. Just get a planner. For whatever reason, I'm pretty rebellious, but I listened to this instruction for whatever reason. And to my amazement, and then ultimately to my frustration, my grades shot through the roof over the course of a month. And I didn't work any harder. I didn't try more. I didn't go to more classes. I didn't study any longer. I just knew when things were, and I was able to plan my life a little bit more effectively. And the reason it was so, frustrating was because I had this narrative about myself that I was just dumb, or I was bad at school, or I wasn't studious or organized, and I would never be able to do this and that because I was bad at school. And it just changed. It flip-flopped in 4 weeks, and I had been living with that for years. So that kind of I would say started me on a path of understanding that the stories that we tell to ourselves about ourselves are really important. I also kind of grew up like super Lord of the Rings nerd, and also kind of closeted nerd, would after school go to basketball practice, hang out with all the jocks, then would go home, play World of Warcraft, not do my homework, and then do it again. And those worlds never collided. Like they could never know about each other. As I got older, they became more integrated and things like that. But fast forward to post college, I'm working at a startup in Seattle. I'm keeping a journal at the time because at this point I know the importance of keeping a journal. I'm super dialed in. I'm like a robot, like a productivity robot, and I watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is the best movie trilogy, and I'll die on that hill. I finished it on a Sunday night. Came into work on a Monday, sat down to open my journal like I had done tons of times before. And for whatever reason, I was just super bothered by what was in front of me. I was very uninspired. And I really just felt this this need for my journal to be more epic, to tell me a story, and to kind of, keep me engaged a little more than what mine was. And so right then and there, I was like, there should be a journal like this out there already. So I searched for one. I looked on Amazon, Google, high and low, and everything I found was either too mechanical or it was too kind of like up in the air, almost like a therapy workbook. And it was really weird to me because it was so intuitive of an idea. I was very surprised nothing exists. So I didn't want to make a journal or anything like that. But when I saw nothing was there, I just felt like I had a really clear vision as to what I wanted to use. So I went home that night and I convinced Kyle that we should do this idea together. And he was really encouraging. I had pitched tons of ideas to him for other business things like that were terrible. Kyle can attest to that. But for whatever reason, he really encouraged this one. And that was about 4 years ago.
That's so cool.
And so, that's kind of how we got to where we are now.
All right. So now I've got to ask Kyle, what was the craziest business idea that he pitched to you before the Hero's Journal?
This is great because this is actually one I was relatively excited about, but it was just not really feasible. We thought about, so Nick and I played a lot of League of Legends in our day, and we thought about writing 10 to 15 page ebooks of League of Legends, like fan fiction, and selling them on Amazon.
This is a thing now. Guys, people are doing this. What you're talking about is a real thing now. I mean, I don't know if it's League of Legends, but fan fiction, like, just churning out the ebooks like one every 2 weeks. That's something that's out there.
Yeah, we played these two characters named Bard and Tarek. So we were going to do like the adventures of Brad and Terry was like the idea behind it. And it was funny, and it was like a cute idea, I think, but there wasn't a lot of legs as we sat down to actually write these. And we also didn't know that much about the lore behind these characters. So it was hard to write fan fiction in that scenario.
We're not really writers either. I'm not really sure where the confidence came from that we could just do this. But that was a pretty rough idea that we convinced is gonna make us, millionaires.
And it didn't. But the Hero's Journal was birthed out of all of those conversations in the past about business ideas and those relationships. How did you guys, Kyle? How did you and Nick meet?
So Nick is a year older than me, and he was in the dorms. So I moved into the dorms, and I was an athlete, so I got there like 2 weeks beforehand. This is actually really this is a very important part of our story. Is
awesome.
I was on the cross country team, and the cross country team is, I don't know if you've ever met any cross country runners, but we're a quirky bunch. We're a very quirky bunch. So the day that everyone else moved in to the school, like the sophomores and juniors and seniors, it was a Friday, and my team and I affectionately referred to it as Frolfing Friday. There was a frolf course on our school campus, and I had taken an old pair of jeans that I found and like cut them into like extremely short jean shorts, and I was wearing like this Mickey Mouse shirt and like a ridiculous hat, and all of my teammates were dressed alike in this kind of ridiculous manner. And I met Nick, and I was like, he was like, what are you like? He was like so confused as to why I was dressed so ridiculously. And I was like, it's Frolfing Friday. And from that point forward, he's like, I don't like this guy. He even like let me know. He's like, I do not like this person.
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. So Nick, why didn't you like Kyle? What was it about the first meeting on Frolfing Friday that just you made that really critical, judgmental decision at that moment?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was kind of just like, so, what happens in a lot of colleges, but it's like when you're the freshman at a new college, you're kind of like, you feel this air of like entitlement. So like you kind of feel like all eyes are on you, and they kind of are, you're like the fresh meat of the school or whatever. We went to a smaller college and things. And so I was like, for whatever reason, like very just over it. And I was already kind of cynical, and I just wanted to move my stuff in. And I like, my energy was at like a 1 when I was moving in, and his energy was like at a 11. And he didn't say it's for Friday. He like yelled it through the halls. And I was just like, go away, grow up. So anyway, that's kind of how it happened.
He decided that he didn't like you, Kyle, and then how did the rest of this tale go?
So to my defense, he says that freshmen have this certain energy, but what he didn't realize at the moment is that's just kind of like my energy towards life. I'm very much like the person who's doing ridiculous stuff a lot of the time. So I think that he realized that I wasn't acting a certain way. I was just being myself, which I think helped my case. I might be reading into a little bit.
No.
But yeah. And that like 6 months later, so it took 6 months. There was 6 months period where he was like, this guy's not a great person. And
he was also my neighbor, by the way. So like he was my next door. So it wasn't like he was down the hall
with this guy that you didn't like all the time. And,
I was like, oh, he's loud, he's obnoxious, he's an athlete, so he's going to smell,
and he's a freshman,
and he's a freshman. He lives right next to me. So it was kind of all that in one moment, Yeah. But anyway, we did have a moment.
I was playing a hip hop beat on my speakers in my dorm room, and I was like freestyle rapping with my friends, and then Nick came in and he started spitting some bars. So we and when I say spitting some bars, it sounds a little lame, and I want you to know that it was as lame as it sounded coming out of my mouth.
I was going to ask you guys to go ahead and drop us some right now.
No, not.
Yeah. Every person who likes the Hero Journal would stop.
Time, so that helps, I'm sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of the beginning of that. And then we realized that we had more in common than just our love for frolfing. We were like both very like, so the schedule of a collegiate athlete is very like strenuous. You have a lot of practices, you have classes, you have stuff like that. So he and I really bonded over like our need to organize our life just to like accomplish the things that we had to do. And then we like really bonded over like literary theory, which is kind of a weird thing to bond over something with somebody, but like we would talk about like C.S. Lewis, and we would talk about like the Lord of the Rings, and talk about all these great stories and these great writers and how they like express themselves. And so we kind of like bonded over like the creative side of like literature. And in a lot of ways, the Hero's Journal is kind of like the brainchild of both of these worlds coming together. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That is an important part of the story. So you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but Nick, why is the Hero's Journal different from other productivity journals?
Yeah. Well, what I found, just as someone who uses these productivity journals, and again, in a lot of ways, made the Hero's Journal scratch my own itch and just to selfishly use. The Hero's Journal is the only journal I think exists that really asks you about the story that's going on under the productivity, if you will. Most goal-setting journals, most like day planners and stuff, they'll just ask you to set a goal and then go do it. Which is probably why most goals fail, because they don't really stop and pause and consider, okay, you want to lose 15 pounds. That's a good goal. Why do you want to lose 15 pounds? Because that's a much more interesting question. There's people who want to lose 15 pounds to live longer, to play with their kids. There's people who want to look better naked. There's people who want to drop weight for a marathon. Those are all very different situations with different mindsets, different psychologies behind them and motivations. And, I felt like that was a big piece that was missing in kind of the introduction of every single journal. So we made sure we put that in. And the thing that made sense for us was that, stories are like the most important things to humans. Like we are so endlessly engaged with stories. And I don't have to tell you, it's no wonder that, in a 7-minute meeting about a spreadsheet, like people are dozing off. Yet, in a 4-hour extended edition Lord of the Rings, I'm like, I wish this was an hour longer.
Right.
It's like, if there's a good story, no matter what medium you're talking about, movies, comics, whatever, humans are going to pay attention to it. So much so that like our brains, we make up stories and we tell ourselves that story, like I kind of referred to earlier, all the time. And the unique thing about telling a story and as it pertains to like the human brain and a journal is that like we observe what we repeat, and that becomes the narrative. And journaling every day is such a repetitive something that you have to show up for every day. And so just a small example, it's like if you sit down every day and you write down what you're grateful for and you say, my family, my kids, the opportunity to be a good parent, over time, there's a story, there's a narrative that develops where you're like, I like my kids. I like my family. I like being a parent. And, who knows? Maybe one day there's some choice you have to make between something and like your kids or being there for your family or being a good parent. And it becomes kind of like you refer to that story because that's what's been kind of developing in the background. So long-winded answer, basically stories are important and they play a part in our lives, whether we like it or not. So we wanted to have a journal that made you think about story, but was also, like it was not a therapy workbook. It's light enough to use. It's light enough to do in 3 or 4 minutes, and it's fun. And one really easy kind of low-hanging fruit that we wanted to put in there was just have a story that actually evolves as you go through the journal, so that you're not like me and 2/3 of the way through like a 6-month journal, you're just like, this is just the same templated page printed over and over again. There's actually something different waiting on every single page. There's a new quote. There's a new movement in the story. So very long-winded answer. I could keep going too, but I'll stop. That's basically why the Hero's Journal is different.
So Kyle, how did you guys use your passion for storytelling to really kind of come up with the process that you guys that a hero, that's what you guys call the people that are using the journals. The heroes are going through this, they're going through this story that's continuing to progress, like Nick was just talking about. How did you guys use your understanding of storytelling to help craft that idea and develop that strategy?
Yeah, that's actually a question that pinpoints a very specific time of our product creation. So Nick came to me with the idea in May of 2018, and we went like straight to a copy shop and we started just writing stuff down. Like, how do we start this thing? And one of the biggest parts of storytelling is like crossing the threshold. It's like going from where you are now into this new mystical world. And we were trying to find a way of like, how do we use this journal as a portal to transport them from their normal life to a new life where they're the hero and they're accomplishing this amazing quest. So Nick and I decided we're like, we'll do an ad lib. We'll just say like, enter your goal, enter your name, enter these things. And once you put them all in, it'll tell this story about how you transitioned from where you were and then to where you're trying to go. A couple terrible attempts later, Nick and I are laughing at ourselves as we read these to ourselves out loud. We realized that no matter what we did, if we had someone fill something out in that way, they would just be living a story that we told them to live. Like they would have a hard time making it their own because we were like almost templating and writing the story for them. So it really wasn't until we met Ryan, our artist, that we were able to really think about like, well, what if we took out words? What if we just took all of the kind of scenes and the really obvious like events that happen, all the stories that we've ever seen, and put them into art on the journal so that people can see this and then read in their own circumstance to this story that's taking place. So that not only are they using their journal, not only are they like accomplishing their goal, but they're actually seeing themselves as the specific little hero on the page, who we affectionately named you because you're the hero of the story. And our hope is that we tell a great story, but not because it's us telling a great story, but it's because you're living a great one. So if anyone looks at the journal and they're like, these scenes are relatively like basic or like relatively generic, it's because it's meant to be interpreted through the lens of the person using the journal, not through what we think you should see the journal as. So we even held off of putting lore into the journal because we were afraid that it would imply too much of our storytelling into someone else's life. So over the course of the last 3 years, people have given us the invitation to add more lore and more context into these worlds. But really, since the beginning, we've erred on the side of like generic and making sure that someone else can see it as their story more than us. And that's also why like the character is so like amorphic. There's not really any specific details or anything like that would gender it at all, because we want people to like from any background to be able to see themselves as the hero of their story in the journal.
I want to back up to something both Kyle and Nick were saying just a bit earlier. Stories have power. Just think about the conversations that you've been hearing. You've heard about Nick struggling in school, but he had a teacher who cared enough to turn him on to the idea of a productivity journal, and that made a massive impact on the rest of his life. Kyle told the story of wearing crazy cutoff jean shorts and being an obnoxious freshman that Nick couldn't stand. But then an impromptu rap battle brought them together, and the rest is history. Stories have power. Is it any wonder that when Jesus, the greatest teacher who ever lived, wanted to make the greatest impact on the largest number of people, he didn't teach doctrinal or theological concepts. He told stories. Words matter. Stories have power, especially the stories that we tell ourselves. And here's your chance to change the story that you're telling yourself by joining the fellowship that we've initiated around the Hero's Journal. You've heard us talk about it before. We've begun a quest to better ourselves and our lives through this amazing tool, using the power of stories and these scientifically proven productivity techniques to help fans like us take control of the story that we tell ourselves. And remember, we said it at the beginning of the show, but it bears repeating. Changing our story takes small changes over a period of time. It's not giant moments of inspiration. It's the small, consistent actions. And the Hero's Journal provides a fun and powerful way of taking those steps. And you can join our fellowship absolutely free. Nick and Kyle are making this available to you for free as a download, a digital version of the first act, so that you can begin your quest and join our fellowship. So head on over to theheroesjournal.co/pages/Tatooine Sons to download a digital version of that first act of the Hero's Journal and begin your quest today. Let me give that to you again. theheroesjournal.co/pages/Tatooine Sons. And if you haven't checked out our Patreon page, I want to make sure that you head over there after listening to this episode, because you're probably aware that we regularly post public content on our page, and that means you don't have to be a Patreon supporter to read it. And one of the things that we put up on that page just about every day is a new Dad Moments article. It's an article that takes ideas from the stories that we love, and it looks at them from the greater story perspective that you've come to know Tatooine Sons for. And so it's one thing to hear about this journal that we've been talking about and how it works, but the most important thing I wanted to hear were a couple of stories of some heroes who have used this journal in a way that has impacted their lives. So I asked Nick what his favorite Hero's Journal story is.
Oh man, there's a lot. There's a lot of
I know there are
really, really good stories. I'll tell you a good one because this is a good example of how to use the journal.
Okay.
So we have this girl in our group named Tacey. If you've been in our group for any amount of time, you've probably seen her around. She's very active, and she's amazing. She got the Hero's Journal, and this happens a lot. A lot of people don't know what their quest should be, and your quest is just your goal. Sometimes it's kind of overwhelming. We just tell people, if you don't know what your quest is, then just make your quest to use the journal consistently, or just write a question mark or whatever. And she took that advice. For the first 30 days of her quest, all she did was just fill out the journal. So like what she's grateful for, what the date is, what her to-do list items for the day were, without really any kind of a quest. And she kind of did it very skeptically, just to see if it would kind of fit into her life. And once that kind of habit was developed in her life and she was able to kind of get used to that rhythm, she started actually revisiting that question, what is my quest going to be? And so she wanted to lose some weight, and she implemented a very small change or very small ritual in her day where she would just, I think every hour, would just get up and I think walk like 250 steps. And you could see it kind of mapped out in her, actually, like her daily scheduler, where she would just get up, go like walk 250 steps, come and sit down. So that was kind of like her quest. And she, gave us updates throughout the time, and it was really cool. Well, last year, Kyle and I were going around to different Comic Cons, selling the Hero's Journal and getting to know people face to face, and kind of post COVID, trying to get out into the world a little more. And Tacy ended up showing up to the Comic Con in DC. Kyle and I were setting up our booth, and like we hear these like books slam against the table, and we look over, and it's Tacy, and she has 3 like completed Hero's Journals, colored in, that just detail this entire journey that she had gone on. She had lost, I think, something like 15 to 20 pounds. Okay. Something insane like that. And like she had never really finished a journal before. And it was just crazy. And so we got to like hang out with Tacy for the weekend, and she was phenomenal. But that was a really cool story because we actually got to meet Tacy, and she was like pitching to people during the Comic-Con the whole weekend. She's like, I use this.
Made your weekend really easy, didn't it?
Yeah. To have kind of like a living testimony there. So anyway, that was, it's one thing to make these journals and to cross your fingers and send them out into the world. But when you get to interact with like a real life person who looks you in the eyes and they're like, this thing that you made, like, changed my life. To me and Kyle, I think we're always thinking like, no, you changed your life. I mean, you're the hero here. But it's still a really cool moment to see stories like that. So that's always the one that sticks out to me first, just because
and the amazing thing about that is she's one of those people that we experienced that here with Sam and Nate. I had a kind of a pretty clear idea what I was going to try to use my journal for, what my quest was going to be. Sam went through sort of the opening pages and the introduction, learning about the journal, and the type A firstborn driven, he's like, I know exactly what my quest is going to be, and he's moving forward. And then Nathan, he's 16, so he's younger. So this is the first time he's ever been exposed to anything like a productivity journal. And his personality is just very different. And he's like, I can't think of a quest. And he was like feeling like he was not able to participate. Like he was frustrated that he wasn't going to be able to be a part of what we were doing because he was feeling this pressure to come up with a quest. And of course, we both, Sam and I both were like, you don't have to have a quest, just use the journal. And so it's cool to hear about what you experienced with Tacy and how that was her story too, and how so many others have to kind of start out with really not knowing where they're going. But the key isn't really figuring out where you're trying to go, just getting up and going and seeing what happens. That's part of the adventure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's 2 paths. It's funny because this actually plays out in any story you look at, right? It's like you have the hero who knows what their quest is, and there's a prophecy or something like that, and they go and they set out on their quest and they know what they're doing. And then there's the heroes who don't want to go on a quest and they're just kind of living their everyday life, and they're sort of forced into an adventure. And you kind of watch them struggle to adapt to that new lifestyle. Of course they do, and they become a hero. It's the same way with a journal. It's like you have people who know exactly what they're doing. You have other people who are trying to figure it out, and both are the start of some of our favorite like movies and videos and stuff like that. So it's no wonder that both work. Both are kind of heroic journeys in and of themselves. And I love that, your sons have different paths. I think that's
so it's going to be fun to watch that play out between the two of them too. With it, Nick, what's one of your favorite stories?
Or Kyle,
Kyle's. Or Kyle, sorry,
So just to piggyback off what you guys were just talking about, I think that the journal was created with a very specific intention of making sure that people are kind to themselves as they go on this productivity journey. So the idea that Tacy was able to just write down, I don't have a quest, I'm just going to use this thing every day. That's like the kindest, most simple way of onboarding yourself into like your own heroic journey. Like you're not expecting this amazing thing to happen tomorrow. You're just like, you're allowing yourself to be a hero. And that's great. So that was my only piggyback on that one.
That's cool.
Kind of the opposite side of the coin. We had a hero named Mackenzie, and she really, really wanted to get her teaching certificate. I can't remember which state it was, but for whatever state that she was studying, there's a test called like the EdTPA. It's a very like extensive, it's actually more of a process, but it's a very extensive process to get your teaching certification. And during quarantine of 2020, like the very beginning of quarantine, Nick and I would live stream a lot, and Mackenzie was always in the chats talking about both just being really kind and like helpful to other heroes, but also talking about this dream of becoming like a certified teacher. And over the course of the last 2 years, we've been hearing in live streams about her progress, some of the other side quests she had been going on, maybe some of the obstacles that she had faced due to like quarantine and not being able to like student teach and stuff like that. And it was cool just to be like a part of this hero's life, but it all came to kind of a head about a month ago when there was a post in the Heroes Quarters, which is our Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And it had a picture of 5 heroes journals like next to each other. And she essentially was like, it took me this many journals to get to where I am now, which is a certified teacher. And I'm ready to go and like start this next stage of my life. And outside of like her ability to use the journal really well or her ability to stick on a goal, it was just cool to like be a part of the ups and downs of a hero's journey, and see kind of that the greater North Star of like being an educator. And there's probably a lot more like pathos behind the reason why she wants to do it. I can't attest to, but you could just really tell that this was something that was really meaningful, and that I actually have a card. This obviously isn't a video podcast, but I have a card right here from Mackenzie, kind of outlining the journey and thanking Nick and I. And Nick and I will always say it's the heroes that do the work, but it does mean a lot to us when people kind of reach out, tell us their kind of transformation story.
Amazing.
So yeah, and they even drew one of the characters. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
One of the things that we're trying to do with the Heroes Journal, which I'm hoping that we can encourage some others to do, is using this as a family. So, Sam and Nathan are using it with me. We're talking about it regularly. Every week we get together, we talk about where we're at on our quests and what our, some of our allies and our threats were, and how we progressed, and maybe things that were struggles with it, and how we can encourage each other with it. Have you run across very many families that have been using the journal together in the past?
I think we've definitely seen some like reviews that have come through, like kind of think about like the 5-star, 4-star reviews that are on our website. People that are like, I use this with my family. I've never really seen an in-depth like account. It's actually one of the things I was really excited about, with Tattooing Sons. Like, okay, this will be like one of the first times we get like an actual like, detailed story potentially about what happens when kind of a family unit or a group come together around this journal concept together. It's a really big passion of ours to have this feeling that like people are together on a journey. Mm-hmm. That's why Allies is such an important part of the daily page. It's like, being able to look to your left and your right and see other people trying to better themselves or trying to go on their own quest. Like, I think it's really helpful. It makes it a lot easier to be accountable to filling out a journal. And I'll also say this, like whether you're doing the journal individually or in a group, like, I don't know about you, but like, I think finishing a journal a lot of the times is like finishing a tube of chapstick. It's like no one has ever done it. Like you never, it's like they just disappear a lot of the times. And I think that's because most journals don't encourage you to finish. They just like maybe they'll encourage you to start, or maybe they'll just be blank, but there's never like a finish line. It's just kind of like, now you're done. that's the nice thing about a story, right? It's like when you start a story, you want to know the ending. You want to finish the story. And so whether you're, solo or there's a whole family unit doing it, we get a lot of people that are like, this is the only journal I've ever been able to finish. Wow. And it's like, well, yeah, it's because we designed it to be like a really good ending. So anyway, maybe you guys will be the first. I hope that you guys can be the first kind of like public account.
Well, we're gonna have fun doing it. That's definitely been it's opened up conversations and had an impact on just our conversations around different things that are going on in our lives and stuff. So very excited to be able to continue that process and document it as we go forward. Last question, and then we'll let you guys go. If you could give advice, I'll start with you, Kyle, and then we'll close with you, Nick. If you could give advice to someone that's getting their very first journal, they're like, opening up this beautiful box that you guys send it in, and it's an amazing product. That it's beautiful, it's well designed, and there's something really cool about just kind of holding it in your hands and seeing what you've got there. And so it's really a testament to that. So you're standing there, you're in your kitchen or you're in your office or you're in your bedroom, and you're opening this up for the first time, and you're getting ready to go on your journey with the Hero's Journal. What would be the most important piece of advice that you would give to that hero, Kyle?
The simplest, and it's almost like not even a piece of advice, but it's for some reason the thing that's resonated the most across starting this is just be really, really kind to yourself. There's a reason that you haven't already accomplished the goal that you thought of when you bought it. It's because something came up or something stood in your way to stop that. Because a lot of times people see the goals and they've had these goals for a long time, and for whatever reason, maybe it's timing, whatever it hasn't happened yet. And a lot of times people are really hard on themselves because of that. They think, oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't do this, or I can't do that because I'm not this or I'm not that. Those things are just not true. We believe that a lot of times the reason people don't finish the journals or finish their goals is because they beat themselves up on the way there. Maybe even harder than the obstacles ever did. So just know that when you open up the journal, it's not like a free pass to your goal. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's also a helpful ally. It's a mentor. It's a place to be nice to yourself. It's all of these things kind of put together so that you can not only accomplish your goal, because that's actually the secondary thing. The best thing you can ever get from a journal is to look at yourself more heroically, build a more positive narrative about what you're able to accomplish, and just be more excited about who you are. Is I think is our paramount concern. Any goal is secondary. Being nice to yourself and being heroic is always the primary thing to focus on.
That's awesome. What about you, Nick?
That's great. Kyle gave you I would say kind of like a more philosophical encouragement that we definitely believe. I'll just give you a down to earth practical thing that really helped me every day when I still use my journal. Super simple. Just put it in your way. Put it in front of you. I'm such a out of sight, out of mind person. My journal is always on my desk. Most of the time I try to leave it open. Sometimes I even put it on my keyboard, and I will just kind of have to signal to myself, my future self rather, this is important. We're going to do this. That's why we're putting it in our space. And so, yeah. And, we, like I said, we want people to finish these journals. And so even if your daily page has the date, and trust me, a lot of my daily pages are this exact way. There's a date, and in the schedule section, it just says, today sucked, or today was really hard, or I don't want to journal today. And then the next day or whenever I pick it back up, I journal. It's undated, so you can do whatever you want. Go on vacation, get sick, whatever. So yeah, just put it in your way. Make it easy for yourself to use, and finish it, and then put it on a shelf. Don't throw it away. Keep it as a testament to the story of that time of your life. And I'm sure that you might be hard on yourself in the moment, but a more kind and reflective version of you in the future will probably stumble upon it, or maybe one of your kids, and they'll get to learn some really, true moments of your story through that journal.
The advice that Kyle and Nick give as you begin your quest to change your story is so important. First, give yourself some grace. Be patient. You didn't get to where you are today in a single day, and you're not going to get to where you want to go overnight either. So treat yourself with some kindness as you walk your path. But just as importantly, you have to walk the path. There's an old proverb that comes to mind for me right now. The best day to plant a tree was years ago. The best day to plant a tree is today. So take your first step. Get started. Make your commitment and then see what happens. I want to thank Kyle and Nick for joining me on this week's interview show, and I hope you have a better understanding of the Hero's Journal. I really do want you to join our little fellowship of hobbits and dwarves and elves and men as we walk the path to achieve our quests. Remember, you can join the fellowship for free. You can download Act 1 of the Hero's Journal at theheroesjournal.co/pages/Tatooine Sons. Again, theheroesjournal.co/pages/Tatooine Sons. There's a link in the show notes as well. And thank you so much for listening to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate and review the show on your podcast app of choice. Make sure you hit that follow or subscribe button on your app so you get every episode the moment it drops. Our next episode will release on Tuesday. It's going to be really heavy on Morbius and Moon Knight content. So make sure you follow the show so you don't miss an episode. You can get all ready for those shows and films and all the fun stuff that's coming from Marvel there. And while you're at it, please follow Tatooine Sons on Facebook and Twitter and share this episode with somebody else. It's the best way that you can help grow the show. That's going to do it for today. There's only one thing left to say.
May the Force be with you always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me.
Joy, please.
Yep, yep.